So, Koiku, what are we talking about today?
Honestly, I don't think we prepped anything. I mean,
That's awkward.
we got a bunch of books.
When I walked into the set today, there's like 5 different versions of the Book of Mormon here alone.
There's a lot of scholarship on stuff.
I've got a bad feeling about this.
There's all these books here.
That can only mean one thing.
I'm back,
Steven Smoot!
So, you've been on the show a number of times. We've talked about the Book of Mormon Central, Fair Mormon, the Interpreter Foundation, these great resources and think tanks who produce scholarship that the church has given the thumbs up to. You can use it in institute and seminary. But are there other, foundations for scholarship that may have good intentions, but you can't really trust them? Is that fair to say? Or there's got to be some stuff out there like that, I would assume.
That's a good question to raise. I recall reading a quote on the internet by Abraham Lincoln saying that you can believe and should believe anything you read on the internet because it's all true.
I read that, yeah.
Right? Abraham Lincoln, right?
Super
and
true.
He said, Abraham Lincoln, 1863, if it's on the internet, it's true, so you should just believe it.
I remember learning that in middle school.
Yeah.
Now, of course, Stephen's making a point because Abraham Lincoln didn't say that. Davy Crockett said that.
He did?
Yeah, I think Paul Bunyan said it too.
Did the internet lie to me about Abraham Lincoln saying to believe everything on the internet?
Paul Bunyan isn't real.
You son of a...
Whoa. Okay, calm down now, quick. So, of course, we're joking. We're laughing.
Please delete all of this footage.
No, leave
from
it all
everywhere.
Yeah.
I'm not joking.
Yeah.
Abraham Lincoln said it.
So yes, Abraham Lincoln, of course, did not really say that. I'm just sort of joking here. But your question is a very serious one, and I think the answer is you do need to be careful about what sources you turn to and rely on, because even well-intentioned people, including well-intentioned members of the church, who may feel like they have something that like proves the Book of Mormon or sheds some great light on the Book of Mormon. Sure. There's plenty of times where it turns out to be rather dicey, in my own opinion, and other scholars have pointed this out. So the church, Elder Ballard, in a talk recently that's in the Ensign, talked about using what he called reliable, trustworthy, reputable, and mainstream scholarly sources. And so he named things like the Joseph Smith papers, right, which is a reputable, reliable source. So if your viewers have sort of questions about which sources may or may not be super reliable, it's always good to read a variety and to see what the different perspectives are out there. It's also really good to be well-read, to see what different scholars are saying, what sort of scholarly consensus the scholars are coming to, what the mainstream view on a lot of these things are. And just always be careful, right? Always have a nice, healthy dose of skepticism when you read these sort of faith-promoting rumors or claims out there. Like, we found some artifact in Tennessee that like proves that Jaredites built submarines there or whatever, right?
Yeah,
like that sort of
things
stuff.
like the Bat Creek Stone and stuff like that.
Bat Creek Stone, that's one that gets brought up a lot.
Which, I mean, to be clear, are basically forgeries, right?
That's the consensus among scholars today.
Sure.
Yeah.
So sometimes I'll see people share things like, "Look, this proves that the Book of Mormon is true," or things that might seem at face value, but are not like bit Lehi, right? Like those kind of things. There are certain things that you go, bit Lehi.
What's so interesting about that too is that this is basic scholarly skills.
Critical thinking.
Critical thinking. Yep. If you've written any paper on any subject, you have to have sources that say the same thing, like multiple sources to say that have a consensus on the same thing. I wouldn't be able to go to a professor with any document about any type of research if I didn't have multiple people saying something. But for whatever reason, it's okay to have 0 sources when it comes to
or just like a singular, like some dude in his basement that has like some radio show or whatever. I don't know.
Some weird.
Some YouTube talk show or whatever.
Like a Saints Unscripted. That's what I've heard of. It's pretty weird.
The other thing about consulting both academic sources as well as relying on the Spirit is that we have Joseph Smith as sort of an example of this. So Joseph Smith was an inspired prophet. He received revelation by the Spirit, but he also took time to learn biblical Hebrew. He took time to consult scholars of his day. He and other members of the Quorum of the 12 would have very impassioned discussion and debate about certain things, right? He was very enterprising in wanting to learn knowledge from, we might say, secular sources, right, or academic sources of his day. So we can look to Joseph Smith as an example of someone who synthesized receiving revelation and guidance from the Spirit, and also being informed and having informed opinions and views on things from the scholarship of his day. And it comes to what President Nelson said recently when he said, and I'm going to kind of paraphrase here, but we know that a good revelation comes from good information. Yes. Right? And so I think that's a key part of it, and why myself and others encourage members of the church and also investigators who are looking to the church to access these resources when they're available.
I have a question that might be like totally unrelated. Do you think that's partially why Joseph Smith also like went into the like a Mason?
Oh, yeah.
and learned from there? Because I feel
Totally.
like that was just at the time that was probably one of the highest forms of education you could get because they had so much like information gathered.
It was
over
it was a cultural force. It was a cultural presence. Freemasonry.
Yeah.
There was So that actually is a good example.
But the Illuminati.
The Illuminati. Freemasons run the country.
No, but I actually think something that I learned about the cross, it never even occurred to me until I joined the church, and really recently, that the cross was it was a Roman torture weapon, right?
Mm-hmm.
A way to murder people that went against them. And because of Christ, the cross itself, which was just an object, there's nothing inherently great or mystical about the cross, it's just the cross. But that the symbol of the cross is turned into a symbol of hope, right? So what was a Roman method of execution has become a symbol of hope and love, right?
And
so
the faith of billions of people
Yes.
around the world, yeah.
Throughout religion, all we see is people taking things that are one thing and appropriating it and making it to another thing.
Kind of all part of the restoration.
And you find that
Yeah.
out through scholarship.
Through
these wonderful
through a
things.
hands-on engagement with the materials that are available to you.
Yes.
So when Joseph Smith studied Hebrew, for example, his knowledge of Hebrew actually informed his later revelations and his later discourses. So for example, he learned that Elohim in biblical Hebrew is technically a plural noun. Even though it's treated as a singular noun in most of the Bible, it strictly technically does mean gods, plural. And Joseph Smith learned this, and that informed subsequent revelations and teachings he had.
Right.
That's why in the Book of Abraham, it's the gods creating the earth as opposed to God and so forth, right? So you can see from Joseph Smith, from his study of Hebrew, from his engagement with Freemasonry, you can see him taking the means and the tools available to him and synthesizing it with his own revelation from the Spirit and unfolding the restoration that way. So we shouldn't, members of the church, Latter-day Saints, shouldn't be scared about this. We shouldn't be hesitant. We should be right there at the forefront because we have precedent from our own prophet doing this.
I mean, Jesus Christ himself quoted prophets of the Old Testament. Did he not?
Absolutely did. And the Apostle Paul quoted other Greek poets and Greek philosophers and so forth.
So it seems to me this is a totally fine. I think oftentimes we view Revelation like God comes down and just puts like an SD card chip in your head and you have all the information.
Isn't that how he does it?
No.
I'm pretty sure that's how he does it for Justin.
That's how I haven't studied once.
Yeah. How do you think he got so smart?
This guy's an idiot. But yeah, so on this subject, let's talk about the first resource, Book of Mormon Central.
Yeah. So that's the organization I'm with. I've been on the show before to talk about it. And we have on our website we have our archive, we have our Know Why articles, our videos. We have, so the books you saw earlier, those stacked maroon books, that's Royal Skousen's analysis of textual variants of the Book of Mormon, right? Like this, nice thing. Nobody is ever going to read that. But you can go read it on Book of Mormon Central if you want to, because it's there digitized, all 6 volumes of it, right? So Book of Mormon Central has a resource both for online digital media, both primary sources you can look at, as well as secondary commentary that you can engage with.
And if you don't want that, then you can just get the really rehashed juvenile version of all that, Watching Saints Unscripted, where we very poorly parrot what the scholars are saying.
Oh,
in
come
between
on,
dumb
you
jokes.
guys. Come on,
That's what our
Kwaku.
show is. We're the feeder to get into the good stuff, with young people. They Kwaku and Justin. And then they're reading Royal Skousen. This is what we do.
They're reading
Royal
It's all a part of the
It's all a
plan.
slippery slope.
It's the baby food before the steak.
That's right, Sandra
Well-
Tanner. You got nothing on us.
So one thing I just want to plug real quick for viewers to keep their eyes on for coming down in the near future. So in about March, we're going to launch the beta, and then maybe around June is when we'll have version 1.0 out, we're hoping. Book of Mormon Central is developing an interactive Book of Mormon app where you will have the text of the Book of Mormon, in fact, different editions of the Book of Mormon, interlaced with interactive commentary material like artwork and videos and so forth. So let me just show you here real quick, just to give you an example. So if you look here at sort of First Nephi, you've seen we've reformatted the text. We actually have red lettering so you can see names of God and so forth. But what you can do is you can actually go down to Insights, and you can pull up quotes, like here's a Hugh Nibley quote, for example, where he gives some commentary on this passage. You can check out our Know Whys, which are interspersed throughout the app here. So it's directly accessible. You also go over to Media, and you can take a look at artwork. So here's a nice depiction of Jesus from James Fulmer. Or you can come down and look at this chart from John W. Welch that talks about some stuff happening in First Nephi. So this gives you a sense of what we're working on, and we want to make it, like I said, totally interactive, totally integrated with your sort of digital scripture reading experience. And we hope to have the beta by March. So when March comes around, check out our website at bookofmormoncentral.org and see what we have there. Check out the App Store and so forth. And we hope that this is one way that we can take all this research that's out there, scholarship that's out there, and synthesize it in a nice way that amplifies personal scripture study.
That's actually that's freaking legit. That's so lit.
I'm going to use it.
So yeah, in addition to Book of Mormon Central, just real quick, other resources, they've been mentioned on the show before, but there's the Interpreter Foundation, run by Daniel Peterson. They have a journal, they have a roundtable scripture discussion podcast. They have a great resource. Fair Mormon has been discussed on the show before. They have great apologetic resources. So in other words, people who have questions about criticisms of the church, they can turn to Fair Mormon to get some of their questions answered there. The Neil A. Maxwell Institute at BYU is another good resource that has Book of Mormon scholarship and other what's called Mormon studies related scholarship. So they're also a good resource. And then, of course, last but not least, I have to just plug my favorite, the Joseph Smith Papers, right? I'm a total Joseph Smith Papers fanboy. And so for people who want to get their claws sunk in the raw meat, the raw data of Joseph Smith's life, Joseph Smith Papers is the place to go.
An example of that, on one episode of the show, we talked about Doctrine and Covenants, Section 87, the prophecy in the Civil War. And I always want to know, I was like, okay, this seems a little bit too accurate for my taste. So I wanted to go and look into Joseph Smith Papers to see if it was the original revelation was a little bit different. And I was shocked to find that it's the same thing. It's like the same exact thing. And I was like, wow, what a testament to his prophetic ministry. But also, I'm so glad that resource is there where I can go and see the original
transcript.
And it's amazing. It's amazing.
Well, this is on the Joseph Smith Papers website. This is the printer's manuscript of the Book of Mormon. And so you can go read, and it's for free, it's digital, it's high resolution, you can search it, it's great. On the Joseph Smith Papers website, the printer's manuscript. This is the manuscript Oliver Cowdery copied as they prepared for publication for the Book of Mormon, and it's right there available and free for you. And so, I mean, like, this is great. We have access to this right here in the palm of our hands with the internet.
But I thought those Mormons don't talk about their church history. You guys hide everything, and we have everything available for you
on the church's website.
For free. That's the
For
thing.
free.
Like, you don't even have to pay us.
You don't have to go to a theological seminary. It's right there. You can just look at it. It's really cool.
We're very secretive, by the way.
The most secretive church that goes out
church.
and tries to get everyone to join.
Yeah. It hides all of their really embarrassing history and documents on their church
website.
website.
Sometimes we even have it on the front page.
I know, right? Like, those rascal Mormons, I tell you, with their secret conspiracies.
We're just getting away with so much stuff.
Let me just plug one more thing here real quick. Speaking of the Maxwell Institute, recently Grant Hardy, he's a Book of Mormon scholar, has published his Reader's Edition, or rather this is called the Maxwell Institute Study Edition of the Book of Mormon, done by the Maxwell Institute. It's phenomenal. He's reformatted the Book of Mormon to make it more readable and engaging. He's provided some notes and some commentary. He's restructured it so that you can sort of get into the text and really draw out new meaning from it. This is another kind of resource that you have available for when studying the Book of Mormon. You have our app coming forth. You have the Joseph Smith Papers to get the raw data, and then you have nice stuff like Grant Hardy's study edition that sort of brings it together in a nice, presentable way.
This will really benefit lots of our audience who come from different Christian backgrounds who are used to more easily readable Bibles.
Yeah.
Now with the Book of Mormon, same thing. So
wait, but just to be clear, it's not changing the text.
No,
right.
It's just not changing the text, but it is like adding explanations.
Yes, but it's formatted differently. So it's great.
The church itself supports these kinds of efforts. So at Book of Mormon Central, we have permission from the church to use their official edition of the Book of Mormon for our interactive scripture app that we're developing. Grant Hardy also had permission to use the church's official edition of the Book of Mormon. We're not changing the text. We're not trying to manipulate it in that way. We're simply repackaging it, you might say.
And it's not like this is some third party
some weird guy trying to. This is supported by the church. The church encourages these kinds of things, and so for now, you can check out guys like Grant Hardy, and then later down the road in March and later June, perhaps when we launch, you should be sure to check out our Book of Mormon Central Interactive Scriptures app, which will fit it all in the palm of your hand, so to speak.
Yeah, awesome. So on my mission is where I really started to dive into like learning more about the scriptures, because we had in one of my apartments we found like the seminary manuals and the institute manuals, and so on P days when we were bored we would just go through and like learn stuff. And the cool thing is that like I don't think a lot of this stuff is really going to be what changes your testimony, what makes or break it, but there's a lot of things there to strengthen. And like you said, I think it's important for us to become like God to learn as much as possible because knowledge is light, you know? And so I think as you start learning all these things and gathering more information, you're going to grow. Thanks so much, Stephen.
Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure. So, all you lovely folks out there on YouTube who are following Saints Unscripted, be sure to like and subscribe. Be sure to share and follow Saints Unscripted on all their different social media platforms. And one day you may be blessed to receive a nice pile of books like this. Who knows? Strange things have happened in the universe, and maybe your life will be ruined like mine for the best by getting involved in all this nice big scholarship.
This is the strangest altruism I had in my life, but it's fine.